Hello and welcome to my review of Mahou Daisakusen, also known as Sorcer Striker. I recently managed to get a 1 credit clear of the game and wanted to share some of my thoughts on the experience. It's a cool, slightly underappreciated game with lots of personality. It can also be a little annoying. The game isn't very complicated and the run is like 30 minutes long, so I won't be doing a full commentary this time. Instead, I'll review the game and then present the run as is, in case you want to get a better look at the game. So, let's get into it. Mahou Daisakusen was developed by Raizing, a studio best known for Battle Garegga, and it was actually Raizing's first title. It was released in 1993 and there's 2 versions of the game. Mahou Daisakusen is the original Japanese release, and then Sorcer Striker is the international version. The main differences between the two is that Sorcer Striker is in English and it's also quite a bit easier. The early levels are very similar, but as you get deeper into the game you start to notice the changes. Like the bullet patterns are gentler and enemies have a lot less hit points. So there aren't any huge differences in level layouts or the bosses or anything. It's the same game, just easier. And this is an important point that we'll get back to later. In case you're wondering, Mahou Daisakusen doesn't translate to Sorcer Striker. Mahou means magic, Dai is great, and Sakusen is military operation or strategy. So the original title of the game is something like The Great Magic War, which is a little generic, so here I think the localizers did the right decision in changing the name, because Sorcer Striker is the more evocative title to me. The most striking aspect of Mahou Daisakusen is definitely the visuals and the music. The game just has this sense of fun to it. It's set in a sort of a steampunkish fantasy world with the usual dragons and monsters and kings. There's also this spaceship section and a factory with tanks coming out on conveyor belts and stuff. It's not super original or anything, but it's all presented with great care and playfulness. There's lots of small details that are easy to miss when you're concentrating on playing the game. I love how the small guy waits for the turret to fire, or how the king strikes his staff to transform the throne into this huge robot thing, or how at the very start of the game Chitta stumbles while getting into her ship. All the animations are really well done and there's lots of set pieces throughout the game that are there just to make you smile. For example, halfway through the castle stage, a flood takes place and suddenly you're getting all these new underwater enemies. The game just constantly gives you something new to look at. And then there's the soundtrack by Atsuhiro Motoyama, which is very catchy, very melodic and fits the vibe of the game perfectly. I especially enjoyed the slightly sad grooves of stage 4 and the bass rhythms on stage 5, but it's a fun listen from beginning to end. Now I'm spending all this time talking about the visuals and the music because for me those really are the main draw of the game. Mahou Daisakusen is first and foremost a kind of a trip you go on. You travel to a different land, take in all the different sights, enjoy some cool tunes. The actual gameplay is very simple, even a little flawed. You get to select from 4 different characters that you may recognize from Battle Garegga. So there's Gain, Chitta, Miyamoto and Bonam. They all have their own versions of the 3 side weapons you can get, which are the white shots, the focus shots and the homing shot. Very self-explanatory. But in the end, it all boils down to 2 modes of play. Either you're just doing this very straightforward shooting where you almost don't need to dodge anything, or you get these sections that you really need to memorize. There's also basically no scoring outside of just destroying enemies or collecting items. You can milk some of the bosses for points, but even that depends on what patterns the boss randomly decides to use on you. So gameplay wise, Mahou Daisakusen ends up as this pretty static experience where you're often doing the same exact thing every time you play. And you know, that can be okay. Not every game needs to be this super deep thing that you optimize forever. It can be fun and meaningful to just go through a game, enjoy it and then move on to other things. And for the most part, Mahou Daisakusen really succeeds in this, in being this tasty snack of a shmup. But then you get to the stage 5 boss, and here I feel like Raizing got a little confused on what they wanted to do, or maybe they just followed the arcade conventions of the time and decided that, okay, you got this far, you had your fun, and now it's your turn to give us all your money. The stage 5 boss is really challenging, and in my run I use all of my bombs on him. And that wouldn't be too bad in itself, but then you continue on to stage 6, which is the last stage of the game, and you have to fight 6 more bosses in a row if you want to clear the game. So you get an ending gauntlet of 7 bosses in total, and several of them are pretty challenging to beat without dying. There's especially this ninja boss that has attacks that are really not designed to be dodged with the fairly large hitbox that you get in this game. So the most viable way to clear the game is to carry all your extra lives and as many bombs as you can to the boss rush at the end, and then be prepared to pay your resource tax. Now, I'm sure that there are players that can no-miss the whole game and have no trouble with any of the ninja's patterns and stuff, but what I want to say is that the shift in difficulty is very drastic and honestly feels unbalanced. Now, even this wouldn't be too bad, but since this is a game from 1993, it follows the old school way of powering down your ship every time you die. To be fully powered, you need to collect 3 big power-ups that correspond to your side weapon of choice. So if you're like me and playing Chitta using the homing shot, you need to get 3 H items to get your homing to max level. To power up your main shot, you collect coins, and you need lots of coins to get it to its full potential. Every time you die, you lose some of your power. In theory, you could collect all of your 3 side weapon items back after dying, before they drop off screen, but during my runs I never managed to do this, not once. And with your main shot, you just get powered down and need to get new coins to get your power back. But of course, it's possible to die in a place where you don't have the opportunity to get coins or side weapon items, and since you're a lot weaker, the game suddenly gets a lot harder, and there's a bigger chance of you dying again, and then you get even weaker, and then your run is basically over. It's so funny, in one of my runs I got really powered down during the boss rush at the end, and I was so weak that I couldn't even destroy one of the bosses before it timed out. So for me, Mahou Daisakusen really suffers from Gradius syndrome, where the best way to clear is to have your first death as late as possible into the game. And that's actually what ended up happening to me. In my 1cc run, I no-missed up to the ninja boss, and then it was a very safe clear. So that's a lot of negative stuff I just dumped on this game, but for the most part I actually quite enjoyed my time with it. I liked the playful vibe of the game, the music, and the feeling of traveling through this fun fantasy world. It's just that the punishing deaths combined with the long boss rush at the end made it slightly annoying to clear on one credit. But I would still recommend checking out the game, especially if you enjoy the more old school side of shmups and are used to recovering after getting powered down. You may also want to check out the game to see where Raizing got its start. You get to see the characters that reappear in Battle Garega, and I actually specifically wanted to play with Chitta because I found it kinda sad that she's so weak in Garega. You get the attention to detail, even some of the bullet patterns seem slightly familiar from the later games. Even the fact that the game is a little frustrating and harsh is something that I associate with Raizing. So yeah, Mahou Daisakusen is very much worth your time, even if it's more of an audio-visual treat instead of being this complete package like something like Garega. Now, as I said at the beginning, there are 2 versions of the game. Mahou Daisakusen is the original Japanese version, and Sorcer Striker is the easier international version. Honestly, Sorcer Striker may be the better option here, as you get to experience the world of the game and the soundtrack and all that good stuff without having to restart just because you happen to die once in an unfortunate place 20 minutes into the run. But Mahou Daisakusen has the edge in that there is a M2 ShotTriggers port of it on PS4. And though it isn't quite as robust as some of the later ShotTriggers releases, it's still wonderfully put together and very enjoyable to play on. You get the alternate soundtracks, replays and leaderboards, and of course the sleek gadgets on the sides of the screen. It's a shame that the M2 port only has the Japanese version. I'm guessing it just wasn't financially feasible considering how this game isn't very popular to begin with. You'll have to decide for yourself if you want to try playing Sorcer Striker or Mahou Daisakusen. For me, the international version is maybe a little too easy after clearing the Japanese one, but then it doesn't have what I consider to be kind of a cheap difficulty spike at the end. But then again, the M2 ShotTriggers port is just such a nice treat in itself, so it's hard to say. And that's all I have for Raizing's first offering. It's definitely a video game that can offer funness to shmup likers. So, thanks for watching, enjoy the run, and until next time, don't get powered down.